Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? Doing okay? Well, thank you. I want to welcome you to our God's Honest Truth Storytelling Night. We do this now twice a year. We used to do it once a quarter, pre-pandemic, and now we're kind of getting back into it, and twice a year seems about right. So I'm really excited that we have the opportunity to do these stories this evening. So tonight the theme is Watershed Moments, the moment that changed everything. And this came out of a sermon series. You may remember I did it back in January of, I think it was it this year? I think we did it this year? Wow, time flies, doesn't it? So yes, it was this year, and I asked people to send me their watershed moments. And people really took that to heart and sent me some incredible stories. And so I reached out to some of the people who sent me those stories, and I asked them if they might consider coming up here and doing it. And after sending out like 300 invitations, these are who we got left. No. No, we went to them specifically. These wonderful people who you will be hearing in a second. They are very brave to come up here. It is very hard. Many of you in here have actually told stories in the past. It is not easy to come up and tell a story here in front of everyone. And so we got to really give them applause for what they're doing and to make sure that they know that we are behind them 100%. Now, our first story tonight comes from Susan Weller. Susan sent me this story, and it was one of the first people who actually sent me a story about her watershed moment, and it was very, very moving, and I didn't have to beg her much to come and do it, but it is a beautiful story, and I'm really looking forward to it. She's going to start us off tonight with Silent Murmur. Will you welcome her to the stage?
Thank you, Alex, and thank you all for being here. My watershed took place in a physical space and in an inner space too. The physical space was in the middle of the last century up in Minnesota, where I was an 8th grade girl growing up, and it was winter. Minnesotans love winter. I loved every activity you could do in the winter, except ice fishing. We don't have to talk about that. But sledding, tobogganing, skiing, skating, all of it was so much fun. It was also a lot of work because the snowblower had not been invented yet, and we had to shovel a lot. It also had an edge of danger because the wind chill factor had been invented, but it wasn't being announced yet. Human skin can freeze very quickly in below zero deep chills. I know I've frozen a lot of my own skin. It heals, but it hurts. And we didn't always know how much danger we were in. The biggest question we'd ask each other when we went out skating at night was, is my nose white? That meant you had to go right into the warming house. So, fun, a lot of work sometimes, and a bit of danger. That was my physical setting in the winter. The inner setting was that liminal space that an 8th grader lives in that Courtney preached about on Sunday. That space where you've got one foot in each world. I'm kind of my adult size, but I'm kind of still a kid. I'm changing in my mind, my heart, my body, so much change going on. Some of us feel that that's a time when God can really make some change and some deep transformation in our lives. And some of us feel it's just really confusing. I was born into liminal space, one foot in each world. My mom was from southern Georgia, and my dad was from northern Minnesota. Yeah. In our house, we had 2 accents, 2 sets of recipes, 2 cultures, 2 sets of traditions, and we mostly just laughed about it and had fun with it. When I went to Savannah, I was told I was a Yankee and I talked funny. And when I came home, I was told I'd turned into a Southern belle. One world, foot in each world. I always felt pulled between the North and South. And by 8th grade, I was pulled in my social world too. We had a great youth group at my church. We cared about each other. We were friends. We were all equal. It felt to me like the kingdom of heaven. It was just wonderful. But we spread out for school, and I couldn't bring it to school with me. What I found at school was these rigid groups that you couldn't move between. The people in the group that thought they were the best liked me. It wasn't because of my looks. The girls were really petite and pretty. I towered over them. I was 5'8", 110 pounds. What happened to that? Huge, curly, dark hair. What happened to that? Braces on every tooth, the ugliest glasses ever manufactured. I think it was that I had a lot of energy and I could always think of something fun to do. I was glad that they liked me, but I worried sometimes about how the girls treated some of the other girls. That's when the story begins. It was one of those really cold winter days, snowy days up in St. Paul. And a girl named Suzanne was absent from our 8th grade class in our junior high. The usual call home revealed that she had left at the usual time for her half-mile walk. So she was missing. Police were notified. And in about an hour, an announcement came over our PA system. Suzanne had been found where she had fallen in the snow. Suzanne was dead. There were no signs of foul play, and an autopsy would be done. And after some pretty perfunctory condolences and reassurances, we were just kind of expected to carry on and get back to work as usual, an unrealistic expectation, if ever there was one. Our school was about 1,000 kids, and Suzanne was not well known. She was very, very quiet. She seemed tired a lot of the time. She didn't seem to have friends. I can't really remember ever being interested in her at all. She'd be one of the very last kids ever to be picked to be on a team in gym class. And when I thought of her, the few times I did think of her, the first two words that came to mind were mousy and gray. Mousy because she was so quiet, and gray because her Caucasian skin had a strange tone, kind of unappealing tone. I felt really sad, but more afraid. I mean, this was not like the other deaths I had experienced. Goldfish, hamsters, some really distant elderly relatives. I knew kids could die, but could one of us just die suddenly like this? Could I? This was beginning to feel like, excuse the expression, one more nail in the 8th grade coffin of believing that death is for other people, not for me. Well, math class was not going well for me. I just couldn't keep my mind on it, so I thought maybe a bathroom break would help me settle down. But when I got in there, two of my popular friends were there, sobbing. It turned out that Suzanne had tried to walk home with them yesterday, and they had told her she didn't belong with them. And they added, "We told her that we hate her." Seeing the pain that they were in, I decided then and there that no words of cruelty or exclusion would ever come out of my mouth again. And I would not ignore the Suzannes that came into my path. I would just be kinder to everyone. And if I could die, I would be more grateful, more thankful for the many blessings I know I had in my life. I would have a better attitude and quit thinking we were just in purgatory here until we got to high school, where life would really begin. The autopsy revealed a congenital heart condition, a defect never diagnosed. It took me a long time to figure out that this explained Suzanne's low energy and her skin tone. People told me that Suzanne came from a loving, kind family, but I could imagine that her short life had been difficult, with even the effort of breathing a struggle sometimes. Certainly, the effort of breathing sub-zero air and walking through heavy snow was too much of an effort that morning. I thank God that Suzanne, someone I barely knew, left a legacy like that for us. She was found face down in the snow. Death can come quickly. Another lesson for me. And we don't always know other people's struggles. One more lesson. I thank God that I was teachable, and I thank God for my own heart. Our science teacher told us that Suzanne's condition was called a heart murmur. She has continued to murmur to my heart throughout my life. Thank you, Suzanne.
Well, that's the first story we have tonight. And when I read that story originally, I actually took that into the staff meeting because I was so blown away by the story and the way that it was written and told. And I read it, and you ended it actually the same way that she ended it tonight. She ended it in the email that way, which is that she continued to murmur to her. And I think that's a beautiful image for a girl whose life was cut short in that way and that has left such a lasting legacy. We have somebody here tonight who is a very important part of our music ministry. If you've ever heard Chuck play the piano, he is a remarkable pianist, and he often plays alongside Chris when he has the opportunity. He was so kind to send me a story, and he's kind enough to tell it tonight. This is a story that is very near and dear to his heart, and so I would like you to welcome Chuck Beach up to the stage.
Blow them away. I've been a member here for more than 20 years, and you will guess from hearing me speak that I didn't grow up in this area. I'm originally from LA, that's Lower Alabama. I grew up about 60 miles north of Mobile in a very small town. At that time, there was no personal computer, no iPhone, no satellite TV, and all the stores in town closed at 5 p.m. Only a couple of grocery stores would stay open until 7, and then there was nothing. So it was a very rural environment. Daily life consisted of work, school, and church, and activities related to work, school, and church. Of course, we had television, but only the 3 major networks, and all 3 of those stations went off sometime around midnight or 1 a.m. And the only media that was available 24 hours a day was the radio. My dad must have really enjoyed spending time with me and my brother, because whenever he had a special project to work on, which was almost all the time, he would take us along to help. And by help, I mean to get in the way, complain, and fight with each other. I'm sure that it would have been easier for him to have done these chores by himself, but he had the patience to send me back 3 times to get whatever wrench it was he wanted. No, that's a pair of channel locks. I wanted a crescent wrench. I finally got the right one. Or to come behind me when I had supposedly finished raking or mowing and clean up the spots that I had missed. Why did he bother? Why he bothered was because he wanted to teach me a work ethic and some valuable life skills. If a light switch doesn't work, I know how to replace it. If a sink is clogged, I can fix that too. If a toilet needs replacing, I know how to do it. Of course, we also did things besides work, like hunting and fishing and camping and going to the beach and water skiing. I don't think I will ever again need to know how to scale a fish or field dress a deer, but who knows? Maybe I will. There was no kindergarten in our small town, but my mom had taught me to read by the time I was 3. I skipped the 2nd grade and was still so far ahead of my classmates that my 5th grade teacher gave me extra assignments just to keep me occupied. By the time I was 16, I had qualified to go to university, but I opted to stay home and finish enjoying all the senior year activities. Following high school, I went off to college and discovered a whole new world of new and exciting things and all kinds of mischief to get into. I participated in just about all of them. Then back home over Christmas, my first report card came in. It was spectacular. 2 D's and an F. And the rest were not all A's and B's. I was not the least bit surprised, but my parents were stunned. What had I been doing with my time? I'm sure I told them everything but the truth. A day or so later, my dad asked me to come out to his shop for a talk. I don't remember anything he said, but he was extremely disappointed, and I was too. I didn't have anything to say. Then he did something that was completely unexpected. He cut off 2/3 of my allowance, which left me with barely enough money to eat on. I was forced to get a job just to be able to stay in college. Eventually, I started co-oping, which, if you may not know, is I would work 1 semester and then go to school the next semester. And eventually, it caused me to take another 5 years to finish my degree, but eventually I developed a system for studying and was able to take what had been a disastrous beginning and end strong. A few years later, I went on to graduate school and completed an MBA. That enabled me to get out of operations where I was working in process control and move up to the headquarters in a lucrative position as paper trader. 3 years later, I was offered a job in Deerfield, Illinois, at a 50% increase in salary, a significant signing bonus, and other perks. They even bought my house. So it was a good move for me. Then 3 years after that, that company was sold, and I had to change careers again, and I now work for myself. Over the years, Dad and I became good friends, and we would spend hours on the phone solving all the world's problems. I never thought to ask him about cutting off my finances, but it was a life-changing event for me, and if he hadn't done it, I wouldn't be standing here in front of you today. Because learning how to deal with failure is a critical part of life. As Winston Churchill said, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Thank you.
Now, I just want to say that once all these stories are done tonight, and once you've heard all of them, we are going to have a time out in the lobby where you can go and talk to all of our storytellers. There's dessert out there, so you can go enjoy some dessert with them. And, you know, I try to say this every time we do this, which I just think is a critical aspect to why we do this. You know, we come in and we worship with each other on a Sunday morning, and we sit next to people and we say hello and we shake their hand and we move on with our lives. And very often we don't really know that much about the people who we're sitting next to. They have all of these amazing stories, things that they've been through, and so often I think we can just pass by what matters most, which is that those stories are what make us who we are. And as Chuck talked about, that story is really what changed his world going forward. And I think that being willing to talk about those things are things that really fill in the full picture of who we are as the members of this church. Now, the next story that you're going to hear, and actually, before she does the story, I do want to say, if you have your cell phones on, turn them off, because these are being recorded, and I want to make sure in the future that we can use these stories. But the next story comes from Christine Berry, and Christine has been a loyal member of our first service. She comes to that first service. They were there before the pandemic started for a bit, and then they've been there when they're back. They're there every Sunday when they can be there with little ones even, and that shows you the dedication of coming each week that way. And so I was very excited. She's going to tell you why she's telling this story in a second, but I was very excited when she agreed to do it. So if you would, welcome Christine to the stage.
Hi, I'm Christine. So I was asked to share some of my Watershed moments. The initial push came from my father sharing some of these moments with Alex, so thanks, Dad. Normally I have fairly unusual and funny stories to share, like the time a bat landed on my face, or when I lived in a haunted house, or when 3 sheep delayed the closing of our home in Arlington Heights. I'm not kidding. But tonight I'm sharing much more personal stories, so I will do my best to give the consolidated version. My very first Watershed moment occurred around my reading disability. This is something that I don't share very often, as this creates a space of weakness, vulnerability, and in the past, open discussion regarding my intelligence. I'm specifically speaking of the years of being a recipient of bullying and the overall hardships with the academic world. I had to work incredibly hard for many years in order to just finish average amongst my peers. My parents knew there was an issue, but they were having trouble having school provide extra assistance. My second grade teacher also noticed an issue with me holding books upside down and frequently excusing myself to the washroom during free reading time. The Watershed moment was when my second grade teacher pushed back at the school for me to get that extra assistance. And I wish I could say, and the end, that's it, thank you. But that would be too easy. If I did not receive that assistance from my second grade teacher, I undoubtedly would have floundered in school. I would not have attended college, nor would I have gone on to get a master's degree from Rush University. Because of this advocate and her persistence, I was able to get the help I needed and get myself grounded in school. This took years of hard work, And with that, I grew to understand what it's like to live with something that's not within your control, but also at the same time, what it feels like to overcome a given obstacle to achieve your goals. This led me to wanting to help people and leading me to my career today. It was a long journey, starting with reading books upside down, to then finishing with a master's degree in occupational therapy. Of around 300 some applicants, Rush's OT program consisted of 31 people in my class. I'm very proud to be part of that class. So I've been an occupational therapist for 12 years. The first portion of my career was with stroke patients. Now I'm in an outpatient setting working with upper extremity orthopedic injuries, breast cancer patients, and I have a certification in lymphedema therapy as well. My next watershed moment I'm sharing tonight is difficult as it's so multi-layered. In 2018, I had 2 miscarriages. Excuse me. Nothing changed in my physical world. I swear, guys, I practice. Same house, same job, same day-to-day. That was all the same. But there was a significant mental shift. 1 in 4 pregnancies will end in miscarriage. I was prepared. So 1 in 4 pregnancies will end in miscarriage, but no one really talks about it. It's a large community to be part of, but it's a real lonely one. With that, I followed suit with that community, shoved that grief down. And the more that I pushed it down, the heavier it became. I felt like I was treading water with a weight tied around my ankle. I tried looking to a lifeboat of my friends and family, and what they would try to throw me were life preservers, and sometimes I ended up being additional weights, such as, God only gives you what you can handle. This is God's plan. You probably exercise too much. Oh, it's just bad luck. Maybe if you prayed at a different church, this wouldn't be happening. But you're so strong, so you'll be fine. One person even called me a selfish friend for not inviting them over while I actively had a miscarriage in our home. All of these, and many more, made me feel that my grief was insignificant, easy to dust off. And it didn't get easier for us. The miscarriages were just the beginning of our journey with infertility. Currently, 1 in 6 people globally are affected by infertility. But it's still considered like a taboo topic. And I would receive comments like, God planned that, so now you can conceive naturally. And that's strictly speaking of the lockdown of the pandemic impacting my fertility treatments. All these comments made me resent religion, made me resent my friends. I was angry that people found it comforting to tell me that I could suffer as part of God's plan, but they themselves were off the hook for suffering. I was also deeply saddened that I felt like I couldn't talk to my friends about my grief and loneliness anymore, as we could no longer relate to each other. This whole experience changed me. I actually started to go to church more to find answers. I really don't know what I was looking for because I was so angry and spilling over with grief. But eventually I found that I was coming here pretty consistently, and the noise of my life started to quiet out in the background. Eventually, I admitted to myself that it's okay not to be okay. That in itself was a large weight to be lifted. I stopped viewing my friends as the ones that were letting me drown, but instead we were all in the water together, managing our own weights. We just occasionally need to help each other with our heavier load. let someone tread the water with a little bit of help. Slowly, through this all, I found that I'm stronger than I thought I was. I had to push myself through my physical and mental limits. And this is something I'm always going to carry with me. And I'm still working on being more forgiving towards myself and others. On a lighter note, we were successful in our treatments, and we have 2 kids. They are miracles, so thank you.
It's always wonderful when somebody's willing to come up and bare their soul like that, and I want to thank you for doing that. I know that was not easy to do, but we so appreciate that, and that's a big part of what an evening like this is all about. It's about people being real about their lives, talking about sometimes very hard things that have happened to them, and I think that is what bonds us as a community often, is those really difficult things that we've been through, because so many people suffer in the same way, but we suffer in silence, and together, when we talk about it, I really believe we're stronger. So you've done something amazing tonight, and I want to thank you for that. Our last story for the evening is coming from Matt Zagorski. So Matt has started coming to our church with his family last year or so, I'd say. He's been coming. He and I have gone out. We've spent some time together. I've really come to enjoy his family. A really interesting guy. And as somebody who's newer to the church, I thought when he sent me his Watershed moment, I thought, oh, this is a Watershed moment that I really want people to hear about because he is a wonderful guy. And I'm really excited for him to be here tonight to be able to tell you the story. So let's welcome Matt up to the stage, shall we?
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Zagorski. Can you all hear me? Because I tend to move around a lot, so I'm going to kind of hang back here. My watershed moment happened in high school. But before I get to that, I want to tell you a little bit about me so the story has a little more context. First, I was always a big kid. Now, I don't mean I was heavy or overweight. I mean I was just a big kid. I was always the tallest kid in my class by like a full head. When I got into high school, I was actually 6 feet tall and 190 pounds. Now, to give you some perspective on that, I'm 6'1", so I was about that tall, and I'm still 190 pounds. The other thing to know about me is I was a very sensitive kid. My mom said I always felt things very deeply. I was very sympathetic, very compassionate. When I was in first and second grade, as my mother likes to remind me, when the nun would yell at one of the other kids in class, I would cry. Okay, now to be fair, she was usually yelling at Lisa Sparks, who in fourth grade was supposed to be my wife. So I think I was okay, kind of protecting her, but still I was a very sensitive kid. The other thing to know about me is, nope, that's big, sensitive. Yeah, the other thing is when you put these two things together, when you got a sensitive kid, you put him in a man's body, you get a lot of bullying, believe it or not. And it comes from two strange places. One, you have your traditional bully, the really big kid on the block, right? And he has to bully you. It's just in the law. He has to say, all right, and Matt Zagorski, I handled him. All right, got it. But the worst ones are actually the little guys, right? Now, again, I went to Catholic school for 12 years, actually, which is why I'm in a Presbyterian church today. But my graduating class was 18 people. 8 of them were boys. Again, I was really big, and 4 of them were like this high. And they like to work as like a pack. And they would go after me with teasing and taunting and a couple physical things here and there. But what that would do to your self-image and your self-confidence was, it was kind of a big deal. It's big enough that I'm telling you about it now. Now, I don't want to tell you that I was an after-school special. Y'all remember those? Remember the after-school specials? We deal with all that. That wasn't me. But again, it was kind of an issue. So now I get into high school, right? My dad says, Matt, you're a really big guy. You should play football. So I said, okay, and I try out for the football team. Now, please know, at this point, I had never worn football pads. I'd never even watched a full football game. But I went out and I made the team because in case I hadn't mentioned it, I was kind of a big kid. So I get out there and I quickly get locked into a very key role on the football team, tackling dummy. Honest to goodness, I spent more time on my butt and on my back than I did standing on my own 2 feet. So the season's going on. It's about mid-season, maybe mid-October. And the coach says, you guys stink. And we did. He said, we are now looking for new starters on the team. All positions for the linemen are open. Now, if you don't know what a lineman is, in football, those are the guys who get in the stance and they're hitting every drill, right? They're smacking each other all the time. So again, the coach says, we're looking for new starters. Every position is open. And you hear like 40 guys go, yeah! Wah! You could just smell the testosterone in the air, right? If you remember Lord of the Flies, it was like a scene from Lord of the Flies. Everyone's going nuts. Except, of course, for me. Because I'm thinking, oh my God, I am going to die today. Okay, these guys are going to run me over. And that's when it happened. Because I was standing there, and at that moment, all the physical pain of the conditioning that we were doing and of being hit so hard so many times, it kind of dawned on me. And then I was also thinking about how embarrassed and humiliated I was that I couldn't do this. And then Chester Strelchik and Ray Samars, I remembered them, my little taunters. And then it hit me that I could do this if I want to. I know I can do this. These guys are no better than I am. And so it was at that moment the coach said, all right, tackling drill. Zagorski, you go against, you remember these things, right? John Shagru, who was a guy about my size. So we get in our position, coach blows the whistle, and I knock John into next week. And I mean, I'll tell you what, there was no one more surprised than me, okay? So the coach says this, let's do that again. So he calls John back, and now John is like a bull. Did you ever see him? They're like so mad, they're like spitting snot out, and he's ready to kill me. And I do it again, which was pretty cool, again, to my and everybody's surprise. And through the course of the week, the coach had put me up against all the other starters, and we had the same result. Now, needless to say, I started the next game, and I started every game then up until I graduated high school. Now, the watershed moment here is not that I started on the football team. Who really cares? To be honest, I wasn't all that good. The watershed moment for me was getting a glimpse of what I could do if I put all my fears, all my hang-ups, all my anxiety as I got older, guilt, right? If I put all that aside and just focused on doing the thing that I wanted to do. A nice byproduct of that was self-confidence, right? You knock heads enough, you play football enough, you start to build a little self-confidence. So football ends, and then there's this new opportunity come up. What am I going to do now? It's a little baby step over here. And it works out, and all's good. And then there's this little thing out of my comfort zone. It's a little bit bigger step. Works out too. Now I'm singing lead in a band, all right? So things are pretty cool through high school. Then I get into college, right? And what's college? New opportunities, new people, new experiences to be had. And I'm kind of on this buzz. I want to try things. Let's push fear aside and try things. And then You get out of college, you get a job, you get a little ka-ching, ka-ching, and all of a sudden you see the whole world opens up. And there's opportunities and people to meet and adventures everywhere if you want them. Now, just a quick fun story in a high school thing. So I was in my freshman year or so, and football kind of ended, and I was at home, and I have a brother who's 7 years older than I am. He's bigger than I am. He plays college football. He was a big guy. And he came up to me and he said, you know what thing that Dad wants me to do? I want you to do it for me. I said, no. And he kind of got the big brother intimidation stance. He said, I want you to do the thing that Dad told me to do. And I said, no. And I gave him like a football face that I learned. And he said, you know what? I liked you more when you were a pushover. I had kind of then realized that you kind of fake it till you make it, but whatever was happening was kind of a permanent change. Now I'm 58, and I'm looking back at my life, and I hope you all, that's like the saddest thing I've said in like a couple weeks, right? You feel me? You're right? I'm 50, I'm looking back at my life. There's so much more to do, but this is kind of the presentation. So I'm looking back at my life, and by my standards, the ones that are really important, the thing that counts is how I feel, I've led like a really cool and exciting life. I've had lots of adventures. I've met some really interesting people, done interesting things. I've made a habit of throwing myself in the deep end of the pool. Now, that's not to say that everything has been a victory. Certainly it has not. There have been lots of failures, lots of humiliation. But when you can just learn to enjoy the experience and you give it a try, the failure, realize, is just part of it. That's a learning experience too. And you realize that what's important are the people you meet along the way, what you learn, and the fun that you have. So, all this, as I wrap up here, I know you might be thinking, hey, he started on the football team, he thinks he can do anything. But I do. I think I can do anything I put my mind to if I take everything, shove it aside, take all those things that limit and restrict me, put them away, and just focus on the goal. Now, there is a line between confident and cocky, right? And I could see that, people might think I'm on the cocky side, but the bridge to that is humility. And whenever I get a little too cocky, you think back of the failures. I am so blessed. I have a beautiful wife of 29 years who's always happy to pull me back to reality as part of her role. So that's my watershed moment. I learned to really embrace and be excited about life and go for really great adventures. The key being to focus on those and not let my insecurities, my hang-ups, and all the other stuff slow me down. Thank you.
All right, so what I'd like now is for our storytellers to go out to the lobby. You guys go now. You're going to beat the crowd out there. And you guys are going to have the opportunity to talk to everybody. Just go out there. You can get some pie ahead of time. But again, give them a round of applause as they leave, because it is hard to do this. I hope that you'll take some time to go talk to them, to tell them what you appreciated and what you enjoyed. And I just want you to know how much it means to me that you keep coming to these, that we keep having them. Maybe one day you will tell a story. Our next storytelling event will be in the fall, in October. So when you have that opportunity, you'll hear the theme, hopefully. And by the way, you guys can do it too. It's not just for adults. I want you to know that. Like, the youth can do it as well. So if there is ever a theme that comes up and you want to do it, I hope that you will. Go out and congratulate those people. I hope you have an awesome time tonight talking to them. And if you do, say thank you to Susan Carroll, who's the one who brought all that pie and got all that together for us. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful evening.